Hi, I'm Gal Pastor. This is a big round number year in my life. So here are my current thoughts on spirituality and aging. I am quite bothered by aging, befuddled how quickly life is moving along, kind of panicky. How am I supposed to go through this puzzling time-ticking human experience? What can I expect in terms of my aging faith? How ought I think in order to infuse my practical living with some supernatural peace and steadiness in the face of wrinkles? How do Christians age? How does their faith age? Now, here are a couple of factors that can make retaining vibrant and growing faith in God more challenging with time. To start with, just the linear timeline of our life's span means that every day we are further and further removed from the often dramatic experience and insights that initiated our faith. It is the perceived abandonment of first love, the paradigm that perhaps makes us feel like the current state of our spirituality is less valid, and it can indeed happen that the initial passionate pursuit of God is replaced by a dormant stagnation of a learned religiosity. Secondly, the fragmented 2,000-year-old church makes us weary of walking alongside that mess, aligning with such an embarrassing enterprise. Perhaps church doctrine and/or practical witness is a stumbling block to the vibrancy of our own belief. We've seen too much of rotten Christianity that we've become jaded. The rot seems to cut the faith's legs under us. For me personally, as an immigrant in America, what I perceive to be an inauthenticity in American churchgoers that shockingly mimics the larger culture's relational superficiality is quite a turnoff. Finally, and perhaps most prominently, life's challenges, difficulties, seemingly constant, never-ending seasons of some kind of suffering can make us doubtful of God's goodness and presence. How do Christians age? History is what I know. History is where I go for inspiration. We're talking today about someone who was part of the group of people discipled by Apostle John. Born around year 50 of the first century and died early in the following century between 105 and 117. Ignatius was later in life appointed bishop of the church in Antioch in Syria, the third ever bishop of that church, with Peter considered the first. So this is someone who was a tremendously influential early Christian leader. In Ignatius's old age, the Roman Emperor Trajan decreed that the Christians must unite with their pagan neighbors in worship of gods, or else. Ignatius chose the latter, was arrested, bound, and led from Antioch to Rome to be killed. How do we know about any of this? Our info comes from a source work called Martyrdom of Ignatius, which purports to be an account by eyewitnesses of his unusually long journey to Rome and his martyrdom. We also have some of the Ignatius's letters that he wrote on the journey, and I will share from his letter to the Romans. I want to extrapolate some things from his writings that I think inform very much our view of aging as Christians. There are two erroneous directions we could take this in, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to glorify or glamorize his martyrdom. It is exactly what some Christians started doing when they actively sought martyrdom, considering such a brutal death the only true way of being a follower of Christ, or a vastly superior way, almost as a necessary Christian experience. And though it's obvious to us that that is not a correct biblical view of discipleship, we are also very removed from the context that gave birth to such a view. I feel I can't blame them for making even that extreme sense of their extreme circumstances. If I were facing ravenous beasts in the Colosseum and reached for some ultimate meaning to my demise, would I want someone to lecture me then about lack of appropriate nuance in my theology? The other road I want to avoid is minimizing or trivializing Ignatius's experience of horrendous death. I hope we honor him by recalling his thoughts and adopting some of his phrasing in our notably less dramatic discipleship. Now we can imagine that the initiation of Ignatius' spiritual journey happened when he heard John speak about Jesus, and then he went on to become a fairly significant pastoral presence in Syria and beyond. But when in his old age he faced martyrdom, the way he talked about those events, it sounds like he's never felt this positive, this pumped about being a follower of Christ. From the Epistle to the Romans, he writes, "From Syria even unto Rome I fight with beasts, both by land and sea, both by night and day, being bound to 10 leopards. I mean a band of soldiers who, even when they receive benefits, show themselves all the worse. Now I begin to be a disciple. Let fire and the cross, let the crowds of wild beasts, let tearings, breakings, and dislocation of bones, let cutting off of members, let shattering of the whole body, and let all the dreadful torments of the devil come upon me. Only let me attain to Jesus Christ. Now I begin to be a disciple." Or another translation has it, "Today I become a disciple." When I think about aging in my culture, it seems to me it is viewed as a predictable, peaceful, narrowing, contracting of one's life down to relaxation, comfort, sort of a restful sunsetting. Ignatius's life makes me think that Christians are not meant to buy into that view of aging. Christianity is not a thing of silence, he wrote, but of manifest greatness. What if instead we are to foster into our old age this fervent expectation, anticipation that life would still be full of opportunities for faithfulness and energetic growth in relationship to God? What if, from the faith's perspective, aging could mean louder and louder yet crescendo, going out on a high note? How can that happen? Does it take Emperor Trajan? I think for that to happen, there has to be something at stake, yes. There's got to be the tension that grows you. Like with Ignatius, our faith has to feel somehow under threat. I don't at all mean threat here as culture wars, but something more personal. What if the things I listed as detractors from growth, the pests to our holiness, could instead be consistently viewed as that much needed tension? What if there is something yet to be experienced in terms of faith development that is even better than the first love, more vibrant and more exciting yet? What if the aforementioned church's rot is meant to make me toil and work out my ecclesiology and figure out how to love God's people regardless, instead of deconstruct and withdraw? Could the myriad of pain, loss, and suffering that just inevitably comes with aging do something previously unimaginable to my trust in God? I've heard N.T. Wright say somewhere, "Everywhere Paul went, there was a riot. Everywhere I go, they serve tea." I don't need a riot. I don't need martyrdom. But now I become a disciple could become my breath prayer or my battle cry for any tension or hardship that comes at me with the passage of time. Ignatius shows me that the potential for closeness to Christ is inexhaustible. I am never done experiencing deeper yet relationship to God.